All right. I'm Christopher Iliff. I'm going to call to order the Johnson County Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 25, 2022. And the first thing we're going to do is read a statement with regard to the nature of this meeting, because it is both in person and by Zoom. Megan, do you have a statement you can read to us?
Well, we were going to do roll call first, I believe, or that's what I was told we needed to do.
That's fine. We're missing two parties who I think are on their way, but go ahead and we'll just note their introduction when they come. Yeah.
Dave Johns,
Here.
Chris Iliff,
Here.
Randy Hutchins, Jim Neese, Randy Downing,
Here.
Mark Huggins,
Here.
Roger Mason, Michael Levin,
Here.
George Lund,
Here.
Lindsay Grisey, here, and Kelly Rast.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, do you want to read the statement?
Yes. This meeting is now being recorded. Please silence all electronic devices. Please note, this meeting is being held in the board hearing room and the commissioners are attending in person. There is also an option for virtual attendance on Zoom webinar. If you are using Zoom, you may participate in the meeting using your computer, telephone, or other electronic device. Zoom participants' chat will be disabled once the meeting begins. If you have trouble with Zoom, please call 913-715-1700. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand function in the Zoom app to notify planning staff of your desire to speak. To activate this function, click raise hand in the webinar controls at the bottom of the screen. By phone, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. Please do not use the raise your hand function until the start of the agenda item about which you will speak. We will take comments from in-person attendees first, followed by Zoom participants. The Zoom moderator will call on individuals who have raised their hand. The chairman may modify these procedures as needed to conduct an orderly and efficient meeting. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes unless the chair designates a different time period in order to accommodate all speakers desiring to speak. When your name is called by the moderator, your microphone will be unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record, followed by your comments. If you share concerns, comments, or points made by others, please refrain from repeating those comments and instead note for the record that you agree with the previous individual's comments. There will be a 10-second remaining warning sound. For board members and presenters, please state your name every time you begin speaking so the notes can be transcribed for the record. This is a public hearing. We are presenting live and recording the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Chris Iliff. I'm going to call the meeting to order and would ask if there are any objections to the approval of the agenda as printed before us. Hearing no objections, it will be accepted as printed. The next item is a consideration of the minutes of the previous Planning Commission meeting of March 22, 2022. Are there any recommendations for changes or amendments to the minutes of the last meeting?
Yes, this is Kelly Rast. On page 13, I'm sure it's just a typo, but under one of my comments, it says 5450, and it was supposed to be 5050. That's all.
Kelly, what page was that on?
Page 13.
Thank you.
Any other recommendations for changes? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes with the change that Ms. Rast has suggested to our staff? been moved by Mr. Neese, a second
Second,
by
George Lund.
George. And all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I would like to take just a moment. I think during the roll call that Terry Atwell may have been missed with regard to the roll call.
But she is present.
She is present. I just wanted to note that she is in fact here. And so, yeah, thank you very much. All right. We are now in the public comments section. I have 4 people listed. Actually, it looks like a couple is the first 2, and the other 3 will be taken first. And then do we have anybody on Zoom who has registered to make any public comments?
We do not.
All right. So we'll go ahead and start I'm going to call on Rob and Sharman McCollum.
Sharman McCollum, 15215 Edgerton Road, Gardner, Kansas. So we've said a lot of things in all these meetings about the solar farm, and I'm probably not going to say much that's particularly profound, but just want you guys to know that we're not going away. So I'm here today to stand in solidarity with our neighbors in the Western Johnson County and Eastern Douglas County area. This is what neighbors do. We help each other. And one positive from this sad situation has been meeting others who live in our area. It has brought us closer together as a community, and that has been a real pleasure. I would just like to say we'd like to invite all of you to come to our place. You now have our address, and we will take you and show you around. So we live approximately 1 mile northwest of the proposed solar area border. And you can start by seeing where we live in our little 5-acre-ish plot. We have rich soil where we are growing 2 gardens. And just today we planted green beans and lettuce. And you'll see our field where neighbors cut hay. Our neighbor cuts hay every year. And next door to us, you would see where a young family have purchased a piece of land to build their dream home where their 3 young children can thrive. I would take you down the road to the neighbor's sheep farm and down the road to the meat store. And then we'd go down to the Lewis farm where Will Lewis, an industrious young man, is growing and selling vegetables and flowering plants, etc. And on we could go. I say all of this to demonstrate that you are about to ruin beyond measure a beautiful rural area where young and old enjoy a high quality of life. And then a rhetorical question. How many of you have personally visited this area and talked to all the people this will affect? How is it possible that you could look out only for the interest of a few, some of which do not even live in the country, instead of the interest of the many?
Start the clock over.
Yes, I will permit another 3 minutes for you. Mr. McCollum?
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Robert McCollum, same address, 15215 Edgerton Road. We found out lately for several years that it's supposed to be
Mr. McCollum, would you move the microphone over in front of yourself?
that the people that are supposed to be in charge haven't been going by the books as far as the bylaws, the state or the county. And you came already up with a recommendation that wasn't apparently good enough for Nextera. And so it was kicked back down to you guys to make it more in favor of Nextera. And I don't understand why the county, the reason the ratio of people was set up, there was supposed to be, from my understanding, 12 people on the board. And there was supposed to be 3 people from the city and 9 from unincorporated. And that is to keep the cities from overrunning the county, to actually give us a say of what goes on out there. We have townships, we have all kinds of things, and there's no reason why the people on the board can't come from those townships. What are the townships for if it was for something like that? So I'm wondering that if everything has been done in the past, including this carnap thing that we're now hearing about, that they're going to make this corridor out there for traffic. Is any of this stuff legal that has gone on? Because nothing has been done by bylaws or state laws. Are the cities just in charge of everything that goes on out there? I don't understand why things can't be done the way the books say they're supposed to be done. And they say that we can use our land the way we want, and that's not true. I couldn't even put a roof on my house unless I got a permit to do that. But I could let the house fall apart and wood rot into nothing. There's one along 151st Street, a shed that is already in that condition right now. So it just doesn't make much sense, the laws that have been made up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. McCollum. The next speaker is Lisa Huppy. And please forgive me if I did not pronounce your name correctly.
You did great. Most people don't. I'm Lisa Huppy. I live at 17535 Edgerton Road. And I'm about a couple miles from where the big solar farm that or the solar facility that we're all interested in right now. But we're interested in the county as a whole, and we are not against solar energy. So it's not just this one place. This is just one place they're looking at. There will be more. So the regulations that you put in place are going to affect a lot more people than the 200 plus families you're already thinking about affecting. They did not mention the Enright's Gardens, the nursery, big nursery, wedding venue, Whitetail Winery, the only dairy farm, the Norris Dairy Farm, the only dairy farm left in Johnson County that you will also be affecting. So be mindful when you're placing these utility scale solar facilities out in the county. There's a lot of good stuff out there that you will literally ruin from the effects of the solar facilities. Not to mention the devaluation of properties. I am a realtor of 20 years. So I know that undesirable views devalue your home. I think you would agree that if you have an undesirable view from your backyard or your window or your front porch or driving home, it devalues your home. It makes it less marketable, thus decreasing the value. All of us will be affected by that, as well as your tax base. We have supplied you at one point or another, and we're going to supply it again, a property value damage study completed by Mary McClinton Clay, showing how these utility scale solar facilities do in fact devalue homes in other places around the nation. Depending on their proximity to these facilities, some have devalued up to 30%. One homeowner sold their home. They were under contract for $225,000. When news of a utility scale solar facility got out to the buyer, he canceled the contract. They asked him, would you buy the property if we decreased the price by $50,000 on a $225,000 home? He said no. He was a developer and he knows how this devalues property. This is what you will do to us. And we're asking you to please be mindful when you're placing these utility scale solar facilities. Be mindful of your citizens. We look to you to put good regulations in place to protect the citizens of this county. Not to mention the buffers around the city. You're talking about a 1 mile buffer. I know that Edgerton calls for 3 mile buffer in their comprehensive plan. Edgerton Community Development Director sent a letter to your staff requesting a 2 mile buffer. That was ignored. So not only are you ignoring our comprehensive plan for rural Johnson County, you're ignoring the city's comprehensive plan as well. This is inexcusable. We just can't have you operating like this and not considering the people. Instead, you're considering big money out of state investors over your citizens. And I ask you to please not do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Huppy. The next speaker is Corey Brandon.
Yeah, Carrie Brandon, 450 East 2300 Road, Eudora, Kansas. I just emailed you prior to coming over, Jay, and I copied you, Peg, and also the district attorney and Zach, his assistant, and the community as well. I copied. I'm just going to tell you, I did copy them, blind copy, because I want to kind of reiterate what Rob was pointing out. However, since Megan, right, you thank very much for, I sent a core request into Megan to get the planning commission board members' actual official documented addresses with the county to make sure that I'm speaking, educated about unincorporated versus incorporated ratio. And as I understand, if everything is truly and Lisa's kind of looking up as a realtor to make sure everything is still unincorporated or incorporated, mostly, confirming that unincorporated still, the boundary lines are the same. If everyone indeed is adhering to that, that's fantastic. But I want to go back and I want to say that the concern isn't about the here and now, it's about past tense, because we've come a long way in the last year on specifically utility scale solar and drafting the regulations based on discussions and a lot of research and a lot of input from people. Ed Eilert, I believe it was appointed. Terry, welcome to the Planning Commission, as a representation from the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board. But that happened on April 7th. And there's a lot that has happened prior to April 7th. And Terry's appointment does, I believe, make the ratio correct 9-3. But I'm not talking about the here and now. I'm talking about what has happened up until this point. And so what I would like to request is to work with you, Jay and Peg, if you will allow it, to understand and confirm that Kansas state statutes and the Johnson County's Planning Commission bylaws, which I realize you're going to be talking about tonight, were adhered to prior to April 7th and are going to continue to be adhered to moving forward from today's date after you guys accept your new bylaws. There's also other things that I just want to make sure that are in compliance, because there's a lot of Southwest or Consolidated Zoning Boards members that are way past their terms. And then on the Southwest Consolidated, it says that there are 4-year terms, and that can't be. It has to be 3 years. So if Jay and Peg, if you could reply to me at your convenience and let me know if we could sit down and have a conversation so I'm clear on all of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. The last of our signed in speakers is Joyce Whittier. Is Ms. Whittier here? Oh, yeah, thank you.
My name is Joyce Whittier, and I live at 7414 Flint Street, Shawnee, Kansas. I have a couple of things that are in the bylaws that were confusing. You reference some Kansas statutes. I believe it's 192957 that requires 6 specific studies be completed before any change to the comprehensive plan is made. I have seen no evidence that those studies have been made. So I'm just asking you if they have. And in the bylaws on paragraph 609, there's an example given. It says, for example, by statute, a majority vote of all members of the JCPC is required to adopt a comprehensive plan, but not to recommend an amendment to the comprehensive plan. I saw no language in any of the statutes that were cited that said a majority was not required for an amendment. So that needs to be clarified. And the only other thing I want to mention is about the staff. This commission voted in November of last year to basically reassess what had been done prior to that. But the board, the staff, less than 3 weeks later, put together a memo undoing what the planning commission had voted on and presented that to the Board of County Commissioners. If this was a private company and I was running it, they'd be looking for another job right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whittier. Any other member of the public that wishes to speak? If not, I'm going to, at this time, to use my privilege to turn the meeting over to Mr. Leipzig for a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Welcome, everybody, to have a full 12 people here this evening. I just wanted to briefly mention that this meeting is being presented both virtually and in person. So I appreciate that Sherry reading that statement this evening. Going forward, all of our planning commission meetings and all of our zoning board meetings will be in a hybrid format. So one of the things that we've kind of lessons learned as we go through the process of the pandemic and having the virtual capabilities, we're able to do that. So I would say be patient with staff if there are some technical glitches or issues that we have to work through. However, we have several people here this evening that can watch and observe as well. So hopefully at this point there are none, but we're anticipating there will be some point in the future. So I think it's a learning curve for all of us with our DTI team and the planning team to get to this point. But I'm proud of it because I think it's a huge accomplishment to get to this point moving forward. So just wanted to state that in the future, we will have that hybrid option available for all of our meetings.
That's great. I think that's a real improvement in county processes that has been brought to us by technology and forced on us by experience. So great. Thank you. At this time, the next item on the agenda is continued discussion of the proposed bylaws of the Planning Commission. And I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Counsel, Peg Trent.
Mr. Chair, before we go back, we note for the record that Randy Hutchins arrived at 6:30 for the record.
Thank you for 5:51.
I'm sorry.
5:51. Yeah, thank you. He's been here. Yeah, thank you, Sherry.
We're going to pull up the PDF version of the.
PDF, please.
Okay.
I apologize. The reason, hi, good evening, Peg Trent, Chief Counsel. I wanted to make sure we have the exact document that's in your packet. And what had happened is we were in meetings all afternoon, so I didn't get the final Word version. So that's why I had them convert, so it wasn't correct. Okay, everyone can hear? Okay. So at this point, we have the PDF form. So as we left it at the last meeting, I had indicated that I wanted to go through, review everything, make any revisions, have some of my staff also review. One of the clauses that I was real hesitant and I wanted to just have some further dialogue and research on. And this is the clause pertaining to public participation. There was some information that was contained within that clause that I feel that is not valid or consistent with the current U.S. Supreme Court cases. I'm going to try and scroll down here. And as a result of that, my staff and myself, we worked on this clause 6.12, and we took out quite a bit of information. We feel very confident in the information that is in this paragraph at this time. At this point, I believe what we've had is staff go through and just clean up everything. So it's kind of flowing and consolidating so there's no duplication. One of the other items that was added is the definition, what is ex parte communication? If you recall from our last meeting, we discussed members of the JCPC shall disclose to planning staff. That language came for you. We drafted that language while we were here in the meeting. The first part, though, just kind of tells you what is ex parte communication, so you know what that is. Other than that, I'm not sure. There were revisions throughout the document just to do proper English. What happened is a lot of these clauses were copied from the Commissioner's Code of Order. Is it Code of Order? And so we were just copying language that's kind of outdated and needed some cleanup, if you will, and updated. So staff did go through it, cleaned it up, and I think what you're seeing tonight is a better format of the document. At this point, I would stand for any questions or concerns or revisions you may have.
Ms. Trent, Chris Iliff, Chairman. A question on ex parte communications. Given that the Planning Commission is a recommending body rather than a body that has the authority of law behind its decisions, would we be considered decision-making officials?
At this point, technically, you would be a legislative board because what you're doing is you're reviewing items that would ultimately land with new creation of regulations or anything along that line. So with ex parte, the reason we're including this, just to keep the record so that we know that all of you have the same information and it's part of the record as it goes up to the Board of County Commissioners. And as you correctly noted, you are a recommending board. You're not the final stop for that legislation to be adopted, legislation being regulations or comprehensive plan or any document that you're revising. As a matter of fact, these bylaws will go up to the board for their approval.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure I understood.
Okay.
I understood. Are we or are we not decision-making officials who have therefore the requirement of making ex parte communications known to the other members?
You, in your capacity on Kansas law as a planning commission, you are a legislative body. Within your board, there is state statute and resolution that in Johnson County has determined that there needs to be certain composition of the board of which you have zoning board members where you do vote on actual applications and so forth, and that you are a legislative board.
Lindsay Grisay, Ms. Trent, maybe to kind of key into what Chairman Iliff is getting at, I was curious where this definition came from, because what I understood normally, ex parte communications is just defined as communications that any of the commissioners have with members of the public or otherwise outside of this hearing. And I think the decision-making official, I'm just wondering if maybe we delete decision-making official and just say JCPC commissioner.
I see where you're going. I apologize. Yes, that would be appropriate to do. We could take that definition.
Chairman Iliff, was that your concern?
Well, I was just looking for a yes or no.
Well, it's not a yes or no. That's, as you know, as an attorney, it depends. And it depends on
Dave Johnson, not as an attorney.
True enough.
My question would be, so I take the McCollums up and this weekend I go out to their place. Is that ex parte in this definition?
Yes,
And
you would
anything they
need
tell
to,
me-
yes, you would need to come back to the planning commission or somehow put that you went out to the location to take them up on their offer to see that property. You then could describe to your colleagues what you observed. That is putting it all on the record. If they wanted to tell you, they told you specific information that wasn't told as a board, you could ask them and suggest to them to put it in writing so that the other board members have it, or you could put it in writing yourself. We've had the county commissioners actually reduce to writing what others told them so that we make sure the record, and that would be related to solar, that they've been doing that.
Jim Neese, I've got a question. Are the county, pardon me, is the Board of County Commissioners, or is their entity or their position legislative?
They are both. So depending on the item that they are voting on, it could be decision-making where they're sitting in a judicial capacity. So that's a better word, judicial versus legislative. So they're both.
So then as elected official, If
Yeah, it
somebody
would be
calls me
elected
up and-
official. And so what we would do, I think this is a great suggestion, is just to change this, the identity of this to do a JC, we could just do a member, influence a member off the record, a JCPC member or just member.
Jim Neese, I still got another question. So I'm working, I still work, okay? So my partner at a meeting that we're having in our office hears about the road that's going to be someday on the west side of Olathe. And it's going to come before us or a business out there that wants a conditional use permit. And he gives a tirade about this thing going to be next to his farm out there. I work for him. I'm on in this capacity. And then I hear something from somebody else. Because I work in that company, am I going to have to recuse myself?
Mr. Chairman, let me just clarify this and boil this down. So first of all, if you're sitting on the planning commission, you're talking about a CUP you're considering. A CUP would not come, a conditional use permit would not come before this body for a vote.
I'm just using that as an example. I
But
should have
that's a
said
big
CPU,
difference
but he
because the-
says, you know, the rules, the da-da-da, and he rails on this in a meeting I'm in with 30 other people. And I know that that's something that we're going to have to be talking about because they're going to be putting the road through there and some other things. We're going to have to change some situation here. So am I going to have to accuse myself? of that?
Similar to what you're going on right now at the solar, you
I'm
cannot.
not talking about.
I know,
solar.
but you cannot consider an application. You're looking at the information. So if it came before this board planning commission about let's say you have the regulations and you want to change the, how a conditional use permit is, how you obtain it. And you're talking about some scenario, of somebody that had an issue with a CUP permit, then that is factoring into you when you're having the discussion about legislation. You may want to say, hey, board members, I had this situation and this may come up. So yes, you would describe it. But where you have to be cautious is if you, in your situation, which you're describing, if you have a conflict or under our code of ethics, there may be an issue with you voting on that regulation if you have more of a connection. But if it's just Joe Schmo out there talking to you about a CUP permit, then the right way to do it would be to just put it on the record that you had some contact with that individual so the other board members know for the record what information you have and they can benefit for that information.
Jim Neese, we just recently signed a couple documents for the county. And I don't have that in front of me, but I think I signed something that said that we would comply.
Right.
So if I sign and get that notarized, I think we had to notarize it, and I swear that that's what I'm going to do. And I do that, and I hear something or somebody says something to me that's not going to sway my vote. That's what I just don't understand.
Okay, well, we have to separate it. So Mr. Neese, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also serve on a zoning board
I
too?
do, I
Okay.
do.
So in your zoning board capacity, that's more that you're deciding on an application. On that particular board, that has a different standard. So when that's coming forward and you have a specific application in front of you that you received information on, or you are working on that particular item or had done some type of work on that road, and so you're personally involved, that would be a conflict situation. So you could not vote on that particular matter, okay, on that case. However, when you come over to the planning commission, if you're just having regulations about conditional use permits in general, and there's a discussion about road, it would depend upon, if that is pertinent to what's going on as it relates to the conditional permit with roads. I don't know what you would be considering.
Well, let me ask you this, Jimmy. What weight as members here and on the zoning board do we take with a comprehensive plan? Because every time that we've studied and we have up on the board to show everybody what the comprehensive plans really, I don't have it in front of me, but it's about growth and so on and so forth. How much weight do we put into that? Because the issue that we have in front of us coming pretty soon, brings some of that into question for me personally. So my question to you is, how much weight do you really put into that comprehensive plan?
Well, your regulations for you as the planning commission, the comprehensive plan is the foundation for your regulations. So your regulations stem from what you've determined in the comprehensive plan. Hence, when we have solar, it's going to be remanded back to you. It's important that we update the comprehensive plan to address solar before you go and promulgate or recommend regulations.
We don't use it. We don't use a comprehensive plan as a foundation to make judgment on what the upgrade is going to be for a particular, I don't care whether it's solar or anything else. It could be rock quarries. So we tailor the comprehensive plan to the issue that comes before us, or do we use the comprehensive plan as a foundation to make a judgment of what comes before us and what changes to make?
Let me interrupt here. Mr. Neese, we're talking about one specific part of the bylaws, and that is ex parte communications. And we've gotten far afield here. This is a more or less philosophical sort of discussion that's going on here. And if we're going to get through this tonight, I think we need to focus on the issues that are in the bylaw. As I understand it, because of the question with regard to what a decision-making official is, that we would change that to a JCPC, a member of the Johnson County Planning Commission. So that would make it clear what we're talking about in section 6.13. So let me ask the commission, are there other questions with regard to section 6.13 that you have that would make it clearer for you what your role would be?
This is Lindsay Grisay. To Chairman Neese's question, maybe I could articulate how I've read that section as far as, because I'm currently working, and as far as when should an ex parte communication rise to that level to be disclosed. I think that was your initial question, is if you're at work and somebody makes a comment about something, does that rise to the level of disclosure or not? And so, right. And because you maybe work for that person. And Ms. Trent, I'd be curious on if you agree with what I'm going to say, but how I've interpreted it is, if someone is just casually mentioning something in my normal day-to-day job, I would not consider that an ex parte communication. But two things, if they mention it to me, knowing I'm a planning commission member and, hey, as a planning commission member, think of blah, 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 then to me, that rises to the level of ex parte communication. And then the second thing, I think what Ms. Trent was getting at was, if your employer starts talking about, well, hey, it would benefit our company for this road to be improved, or it would benefit the company, then that would rise to the level of conflict of interest, probably a more direct pecuniary conflict. So that's how I've thought through those things, but I just wanted to address that.
Chris Iliff, Chairman, I think Ms. Grisay makes a good distinction there. And I would like, this is slightly aside, but as a practical matter, I think it might be a good idea to put onto our agendas as a regular item, ex parte communications with members of the Planning Commission. This would be an opportunity for people to disclose whether they've been out meeting with people in the community and taking their suggestions, their advice, or not, as the case may be. So I would like that disclosed. I think that would be helpful if people would disclose that before we get into the substance of a meeting.
This is Kelly Rass. We do that in the zoning boards. That's part of the agenda. They ask any
Well-
disclosures or conflicts of interest or whatever. So absolutely, I think it needs to be
You're right.
right up there.
Mr. Chairman,
up
it's
until-
in the bylaws to be added. So
What's
we have-
that?
We have it as part of your bylaws now, that it will add that as 6.06.
Well,
so it'll
see,
be a
you're
part of the
just
agenda.
that far ahead of me. So great. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Randy Downing. So how do we handle any communication we have with county commissioners?
That would be probably just like what occurred at your last meeting, just disclosing it openly that I had visited with the county commissioner about this, just like a citizen.
Lindsay Grisay, also just for my fellow commissioners to note that one of the other ways we can disclose without, bogging down the meetings is I've been forwarding, Ms. Whittier had sent a good email to some of us. I just forwarded that to Mr. Lepsig to add it to the public record. So that might be a way too, if you're having email communications or something, I just forward it to Mr. Lepsig, then we don't have to, it's just an option for us.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you get emails from the commissioners or anybody in the public, you can just forward that to planning staff and it'll be made part of the record. Or if it's verbal, you just disclose it.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, Mark Huggins. I guess I'd like to take this a little different slant. I own an engineering company and surveying company that makes application to county on occasion. And these comprehensive plan and all the regulations affect my business. Sounds like from this discussion that I might be in conflict being here at all.
So we have to go case by case because we don't know what's being brought forward, but there are going to be those opportunities. And so it's just a matter of having a conversation with legal, and legal will review it with you. Just pick up the phone and ask, and we will discuss it with you, whether there's a conflict about what is before the board as to whether there's a conflict or a conflict with the code of ethics. But, we're looking at it, it literally, I can't predict. Some things just happen, evolve, that you didn't have a conflict at the beginning and then it occurs. And it isn't that you intended, it just happens. So we just have to be diligent, and you have to be diligent to actually be aware and communicating with our office.
Yeah, Chris Eiliff, I would say that for people who are the most knowledgeable and experienced in the field of planning to not be eligible to serve on the planning commission would be extremely counterproductive. But if something rises to a true area of conflict, then one would have to disclose that or to recuse oneself. But that happens very seldom.
And just to further elaborate, in Kansas, just your composition and the way that it's set up in Kansas with your planning commission, you have zoning board members that have to be on the board. So there's a chance that what you're hearing as the planning commission, you're going to hear over in your zoning board that you sit on. So this is, the legislature, when they set this up, they thought of this and didn't think much of it as being a problem, but it's something that you have to be mindful of, and just having that conversation with us, to make sure that we're communicating and understanding and seeing if you have a conflict.
Ms. Trent?
I don't have anything else unless you do. What I would recommend is that you would need to bring this as a motion on the floor. And then if you wanted to amend section 6.13 to reflect the change in the language as an amendment, and then voting on the main amendment, or if there's any other revisions.
This is Mike Levin. I had a question about section 4.09.
Okay.
I apologize. I forgot my actual copy in my office. Can you, on the conflict of interest, last time there was discussion about how, if there was a conflict, how the procedure would actually happen as to find resolution.
Mhm.
And I apologize if it's in there and I'm just not seeing it. Is it actually spelled out in there?
Yeah, the back end as to the code of ethics and what goes on and transpires, and that is not contained in this document because that's a separate document. But it does say that in a case of an inquiry or a complaint filed by a member of the public or any other person, and just so you know, sometimes I come into information as legal counsel. So I'll even have one of my staff members look into something because I want to make sure that, you know, that if I'm hearing something, then I want to make sure that we're looking into it to see if it's a conflict. So what would happen at that point? Myself or my designee, which I have a staff member designated, would make a recommendation to you or to that person as to whether there is a conflict of interest. And then you have added in the language that if then, let's say the person agrees and steps down, then they can just recuse themselves as part of this. But if they don't agree, then it can go to a vote of the board of you, and you can decide as a majority whether you believe that is a conflict. And as I stated at the last meeting, if I feel there is a conflict, I'm just one voice. Your voice would be heard, but I will take it to the next level, which is the Ethic Advisory Board, in order for them to be the final arbiter, even though you made your recommendation, because it could go both ways. My concern also, just so you're aware, is I can't do this in executive session. So if you have a discussion or a vote, there's going to have to be some disclosure out and open and a vote. And that kind of goes a lot of ways bad because of what we're doing. And what we're trying to do is, if there is a conflict, you're coming to us potentially, we're making that decision, you're recusing, that's confidential between you and, so we're not disclosing it to the board, and you're just saying, I've got a recusal, and the board doesn't need to know why, other than it's a conflict. So this is a procedure you wanted. I'm fine with whatever you want at this point, because I know that I have an obligation ethically to take it forward. One other thing is we try to resolve these per the code of ethics without having to take it to the advisory board. And like I said, 9 out of 10 times, everyone's agreeing and everybody steps aside or does what they need to do. We're here trying to just make sure there's just not that appearance of impropriety.
Thank you. This is Mike Levin again. Just for the record too, I believe there's a typo in the middle of the
someone-
paragraph. I just saw it says Toto, which is.
Yeah.
But okay.
It's a great group. I have
know.
tickets to the concert coming up.
Thank you.
This is Kelly Ross. I have a question. Likewise, like if you're approached to be recused, is it within our rights to know who submitted that?
Oh, yeah, I don't have any problem telling you. That's public record. So if someone comes forward with an email, we've disclosed that and told you who it was.
Oh,
So
I asked
we
in the
will.
past. and
Yours
I-
wasn't. If you want to know, I'll be candid if we want to be it out in the open. It was, I had heard something within my office, and so I looked into it and found it not to be the case.
Okay.
And,
I was just curious. I'd
and
like
I
to-
hear a lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it comes around, and it's nobody being, it's just we're in the hub of hearing things and seeing things. So we talk among ourselves. It's nothing. And I will ask someone to look into it just to make sure. And it's for your protection too, because if I've heard it, someone else has heard it. We don't want it being circulated out in public.
Okay, I have one other question. Is it possible to answer Ms. Whittier's questions regarding the study she brought up or that one Kansas statute? And then the
I would
other,
rather just deal with answering her one-on-one in her email and doing it by email.
well, I was
because-
kind of interested in the answer too. Does that count?
Okay. Well,
Actually,
I can't remember
at
the
moment,
questions. Let me look.
I'm going to say that in order to get done with this now, I'd like to proceed on.
This is part of it. I have a question about one of the areas.
Then ask your question.
I am, okay. Can you please explain the Kansas statute 192960?
I don't have that handy right now on me. I think it was 1929-57, I think she
Okay.
said.
And I don't have that.
I mean, if we're going by bylaws and there are certain things that we're supposed to be following,
Yeah, I know, but not all of it is.
so some stuff counts, some doesn't.
Well, no, I'm being
Oh.
very respectful, but some of what was said, I was aware of those comments were not, thank you. Okay.
I mean, I just want clarification, what's true, what's not, because I'm not familiar with it. So you can clarify it. That'd be awesome.
Okay. So, within, and it was 2960, so I stand corrected. I wrote 57. What it basically says, and I read, under 192960, the Board of County Commissioners by resolution may provide for the adoption of amendment of zoning regulations for the unincorporated portion of the county in the manner and for the purposes provided in this act. Such regulations may restrict and regulate the height, number of stories, and size of buildings, the percentage of lots that may be occupied, the size of yards, courts, and other spaces, the density of population, including minimum width, depth, and area of lots, the location and use of building structures, land for industry, trade, the use of land. Such resolution shall define the boundaries of the zoning classification. So these are areas that you can amend. And I have basically said that in the upper part of the bylaws of what you have the authority and what you're looking at in your role when you're looking at it. Ms. Whittier wants you to have verbatim the state statute. We didn't put that state statute in it, but it does not mean that it's not applying because, as you well know, if you've been doing your job here with regulations, it's dealing with those exact items.
Okay, thank you.
The second question of Ms. Whittier was on 6.09, if I recall.
Correct.
6.09. I'm not sure what Ms. Whittier's concern, but it was something related to majority of the vote of the members present.
Ms. Trent, I think right in the middle of the paragraph of 6.09, it says that the majority vote of all members of the Johnson County Planning Commission is required to adopt the comprehensive plan, but not to recommend an amendment. And I think if I understood her question, it was to try to say, okay, then what is required for the amendment if not a majority?
It's a majority of those present for the amendment. And so that is taken from I believe state statute, and it says it in state statute. On the initial adoption of comprehensive plan, and we could take that out because you've already adopted your comprehensive plan. It's surplus or whatever the word is. You don't need it. We could take it out, but it's to recommend an amendment to the comprehensive would be by a majority vote.
That seems to make more sense, I think.
Maybe if that sentence just read, a majority of vote of all members of the Johnson County Planning Commission is required to adopt or amend the
No,
comprehensive.
it's not to amend. It's a simple majority. So it's a majority of the members. Correct, Mr. Lynn? It's not. It's the comprehensive plan is of all members. An amendment is not of all. It's
Rick Lynn, Legal Department, Peg's correct. In order to first adopt the comp plan, it takes a majority vote of all members of the Planning Commission. In order to do an amendment, it's a majority of just those members present.
Of the quorum?
Yes.
Okay.
so we could amend it, but it says members present at a meeting unless expressly stated requires a majority of all the members. So I don't think we need to amend it, but if you want me to, we can.
Lindsay Grisay, I don't know that we need to amend it as long as it's, the state statute dictates what the voting is. This doesn't in conflict, I don't think. It's maybe a little unclear, but to get this passed, I'm confident with the language is written. What?
Roger Mason, I think it's very clear. I think we should proceed.
Okay. And then the other comment from Ms. Whittier was a comment on the commissioners and had nothing related to this. I don't recall any other comments. Am I correct? Okay.
Just those two. Thank you.
So that's all I had, if there aren't any other questions.
At this point, unless there are questions of Ms. Trent, it really what we're need to do is to move to accept the bylaws with the amendments that have been discussed here tonight that help my dim memory.
It was
Uh,
paragraph
Ex-Parte.
6.13 to replace the wording of decision-making official to JCPC member.
That's correct. Yeah. I think that was the only affirmative decision with regard or question that we all agreed on that needed to be changed. So at this point, do I hear a motion to accept the bylaws as printed here with that amendment to 6.13?
Roger Mason, I so move.
Can we open it up for some discussion, just briefly?
Let's get the motion on the floor and then it will be open for discussion.
Perfect, thank you.
Correct. Do I hear a second?
Lindsay Gersay, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
So perhaps, Randy Hutchins, perhaps I'm confused in our role here. Our role that I understood was we were representing the members of our community. And by representing the members of our community required us to reach out and understand what the members of our community were actually wanting, what their concerns were. So what I'm hearing now is that I guess I'm now in conflict of interest of reaching out to the people of this. I guess I can't reach out to my county commissioner and have a conversation. And what I'm hearing, what my thoughts are, sounds like our county commissioner can reach out to whoever they want, but as a member of the Planning Development Commission, I can't reach out to members of the community without disclosing each and every person. Honestly, I feel like we're being set up for failure because if we don't disclose a conversation, that I didn't think was meaningful, but somebody else determined, at a higher level than me that it was meaningful, then now I'm set up with risk of not being not disclosing something. So I guess I'm completely confused of what our role is. I know our county commissioner participates in meetings with us in the public. She encourages, we're talking about bringing members into our zoning board. We're going to be talking about bringing members into different sessions to get their feedback, especially around the roads and the conditions out in the unincorporated area. And now I'm supposed to disclose all this. I thought my job was to be a navigate for the community. And now I'm being told that I have to, disclose all this ex parte communication. Tell me, what is my role? Am I an elected official? I feel like even if I was elected official, even if I was elected county commissioner, I'd have more powers than what I have here because I know the county commissioners go out and meet with the people.
Well, Chris Iliff, just discussion. Here's my view. My view is that you can reach out to anybody you want anytime to talk about any item that might come before the Planning Commission. And any member of the public can reach out to me and express his or her opinion with regard to items that are pending before the Planning Commission. And by pending before the Planning Commission, I'm not talking about general planning issues. If somebody comes and complains to you about the roads, the quality of roads out in Gardner or Edgerton, that's not really an issue before the Planning Commission. That's just somebody griping to somebody that they perceive to be someone with influence, which is, I think we've all learned, is not true in the case of the Planning Commission. But nevertheless, I don't think it's a conflict. It doesn't keep you from voting. It doesn't keep you from expressing your opinions. I think what it means is that if someone comes to you and sits down with you with regard to an issue that is coming before or is before the Planning Commission and tells you their opinion and invites you, well, just tells you their opinion, or furthermore, invites you to a meeting with a group of other people or to go and view a part of the county, all it means is that during the portion of our agenda where we disclose ex parte communications, we simply revealed that that conversation took place. That's it, period. Doesn't limit you in any way. It doesn't bind you. It doesn't, it's not a conflict. It's not a conflict of interest. It is nothing other than letting the other board members know that you had a meeting with people who wanted to influence what transpires here at the board. That's just my opinion, but it's based upon decades of serving here and on zoning boards as well. And in zoning boards where we actually make, recommendations on CUPs and, permitted zoning changes and that sort of thing, I think it's really critical that people know that you have had conversations. But, I remember going out and looking at a goat farm before we decided whether or not they could have an excessive number of mini goats out there. And I simply disclosed that I'd gone and looked at it for myself, but nothing more than that. And it wasn't a conflict. It didn't limit us. It didn't hinder us. And it was on the record and we moved on. Any other discussion with regard to the motion on the floor?
No, just one little thing, Ms. Garsay, here. One of the other, I wholeheartly agree with you. And part of the reason that I accepted the appointment is because I enjoy talking to my neighbors, hearing the concerns of the community. One of the reasons I thought it was important to have this section in the bylaws was to actually give us permission to do that. And from your standpoint, I agree with Chairman Iliff wholeheartedly. I would only feel the need to disclose if there was a pending issue. For example, the solar farm is a big issue. And I think it's important not only to disclose among the fellow commissioners, but also the public. For example, if NextEra or any other solar solar company reached out to any of us directly, I think that should be made public to the public and to the community, just like getting an invite to somebody's farm or to see the land should be made public and give us all better decision-making ability and better visibility and transparency to the public. That's how I would personally make the decision on disclosure. Ms. Trent, would you have a different, does that seem to align with what your expectations are?
I think both of you have outlined it beautifully and said it well. And I feel, as a matter of fact, in your role on the Planning Commission, looking and seeing and reporting back, that helps people to understand where you're coming from in your decision making. And so this is just making a record, and it is everything you said, transparency, being open, and that doesn't create a conflict. Conflicts come from different manners.
So does the county commissioners report that they have talked to me? Is it dependent upon them to report that they've had a conversation with me in their meeting, in their disclosure?
In their disclosures, when it's part of the record, they will disclose it. But at this point, I didn't know that they were talking with you, all of you, until I was enlightened at your last meeting. And that made me understand that that's going on among all of the county commissioners, not just one. They're all doing it. So we have to take a look at it as a process and how that looks when it comes up to them. And some of them do. I have heard them say that I've had a conversation with so-and-so. They don't say the name and they'll talk about that conversation. So I have heard it happen from the dais. But yes, they're going through the same review of their rules. And, this is a new era of accountability in Johnson County, as you're seeing. So, it's going to happen now.
Just for the record, Chris Iliff, no county commissioners talking to me. So I don't know whether to be offended or not. But at any rate, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. It's unanimously passed. Thank you.
So for the record, I reached out and to my county commissioner and left her a voice message. I have not heard back from her yet.
You're in the same position I'm in then. All right. Director's report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Jay Leipzig, the planning director. My report this evening will be very brief. Just to point out in your attachment, the Board of County Commissioners action is included in your packet. Also, the Board of County Commissioners public hearing regarding the solar facilities on April the 4th. That item was remanded back to the Planning Commission, and we have established a special meeting date of May 10th, 2022. It's a Tuesday evening at 5:45 p.m. And that meeting will be held in this building in a virtual and hybrid, or excuse, in-person and hybrid format on May 10th. We also have a next regularly scheduled meeting on May 24th, 2022 at 5:45 p.m. and may be used for further consideration of the solar amendments. And as I mentioned, the Planning Commission's consideration of solar amendments is required to be completed by May 24th, 2022. The other item to note, Mr. Chair, is as I mentioned, the future Planning Commission meetings and discussion for video and streaming online. That is, we will be doing that in the future. So all of our meetings will be in that hybrid format. And the last item is that I became aware of a training today that the Mid-America Regional Council is having on a planning commissioner training, which they were having those fairly regularly until essentially until the pandemic. They kind of stopped it, but they do have a training scheduled for May 12th, 2022. I don't know the exact time. I believe it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I'm going to confirm that. And we'll send out an email to you tomorrow. If any of you are interested in those training opportunities, it's usually free. And but I believe the training for this next session is focused on housing, but I don't know particular issues of housing. But they have these periodically through the Mid-America Regional Council, and it's a great opportunity to network with other planning commission members in the area. And they'll have 4 or 5 of those throughout the year. So I encourage you to attend that if you're able to.
Yep. Thanks for letting us know about that, Mr. Leipzig. I recommend any meetings with the Mid-America Regional Council. They do a good job. Those meetings are usually held at their headquarters, are they not?
Yes, it's 600 Broadway in Kansas City, Missouri.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Updates or other business? Here. Yes, Ms. Trent.
If I could discuss, as you heard from the director, you will be, the matter as to solar will be remanded back to this board. As you recall, there were numerous conflicts that were identified at that particular time. So with that said, we would renew that those individuals that were previously conflicted would continue to be conflicted. And that results in someone else chairing that particular meeting. In our bylaws you just adopted, it indicated, I think, the most senior serving member and with the Planning Commission. And I believe that Mr. Neese had served in that role, but was not, we've subsequently learned, but we didn't have bylaws at that time, as the senior serving member. But now I think we have it that I believe we put in there that you could by vote determine who you wanted to serve. So I'm putting that forward, and I need to check the bylaws just to make sure it says that. But at this point, that decision point would need to be made tonight. And then if anyone had any questions about conflicts or anything moving forward, to get with our office and we'll respond to anything.
Miss Trent, just a quick question. This is Chairman Grisey. Would the chairman recuse from the entire meeting or just from the portion dealing with the item that there's a conflict?
Just the conflicted item.
Oh, okay. That's why I was just curious if it was,
Apologize.
oh no, the whole meeting or just the portion?
This is Mike Levin. I have a quick question. I apologize about the question, but I'm going to ask it. So if a vote is taken to determine who the stand-in chairman is, are people who have to recuse themselves from that topic, are they allowed to vote in that?
That's a good
I'm just,
question.
oh, good question. All right, I don't feel bad.
I would say that they could be voting on that matter because it's not related to the solar. It's about who's to serve in that role due to the chairman's conflict. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, can you refer me to the section of the
Yeah, it's
bylaws?
5.01. And we added unless another individual is chosen as acting chairperson for the meeting by a majority of those present. So that was contained in 5.01.
Who is the oldest serving?
I didn't say oldest.
I said oldest serving, oldest serving.
It's Jay Leipzig, Planning Director. We believe it's George Lund. Mr. Lund.
Really?
Yes.
Jim Neese, I have one other question. The meeting on the 10th, is it going to be public here? I mean, is it what's the agenda for that? Excuse me. But I need.
Mr. Neese, Jay Leipzig, Planning Director. It will be, that is a special meeting at 5:45 on May 10th. That will be a public hearing to discuss the solar regulations.
This is Kelly Rass. I have a question, and I think I had addressed you with it before. So since they're remanding it back to us, I'm assuming there is things that obviously they had a different opinion on. So will they send their, I guess, rebuttal or their facts of why they feel like they disagreed? And then, we can come back and, I guess I'm looking at it as a debate, or did they just like, nope?
Mr. Rath, Jay Leipzig, Planning Department. I will, as part of the remand action, it must include the reasons for why it was remanded back. So that would be part of the staff report, part of the material.
Okay, will they back that up with some sort of facts or data points or opinions? Or
Yes. So right now, I believe there were 8 categories, if I'm correct, that they had identified of issues for you to further review. And they indicated what they're suggesting. And there was the why articulated in those motions or during their discussions of why. So specifically, it was outlined. Let me back up. It did not indicate why. It just gave you the 8 reasons of what they wanted you to look at, and take another look at, and what they're suggesting. Then what would happen is you would review, staff will bring those forward to you, and you would look at each of those 8 areas, make a decision on whether you agree or disagree. And this time, we're going to make sure that we capture why you are saying what you're recommending.
but they're not, you clarified that they are not sending back a why.
No,
Okay.
we have the do we have a transcript?
Well, I watched it online.
We have the transcript, I believe.
Yes, we do the transcript.
Yeah.
Jim Neese, I've got a request. I attended that and some of us watched it online. I would like a manuscript of the minutes, exact minutes of that. I think that everybody here should get that, because I did not hear any. I mean, they said we should do this, we should do that, we're going to send this back. They gave no reasons, concrete reasons
That is correct. They wanted
giving
you to
us
review
guidance
it.
and I didn't hear a lot of concrete reasons of why we sent to them what we did. There was almost none whatsoever. So I would like the minutes of that meeting. I would also like the copy of the minutes from the meeting when the staff presented it to the county commissioners. Okay. And I'd also like to have the minutes of the September meeting. The first presentation that you made, I think it was in September. I've got all those
To
minutes.
you, to this board, or
I think everybody,
to
whether
this
they read them or
board
not,
commission?
that's up to them. But we went from one set of recommendations through a series. I personally have got a couple sets of minutes, and I think it's important. If they're sending it back to us for us to be we understand the flow of activity that happened through the recommendations that we made. Okay. And I'm going to ask one other thing. Is the county commissioner asked the staff, I can't quote him, but I think he said, what are the cities? What's their recommendation? And John said, he said what the recommendation was for Gardner. And then he said what the recommendation was for Edgerton. And Edgerton gave a very detailed proposal to us to consider. And from what my understanding was, from what Sean said in the past, is that Gardner had kind of gone along with the new mile and a half. I'm sure that is what you said, and I think I'm right there, Sean. So what I would like is the letter from Edgerton, copies of the letter, and the letters from the other two cities, which would be Spring Hill and Gardner, to be
Overland Park sent one
given
in
to
too.
us in Overland Park, yes. And because the one from Gardner was on the back of it was on the back side of a copy from something else, at least mine was. And then I would like for that to be forwarded to the county commissioners. And that, if that's out of order, fine. But the county commissioners asked that question, and I about fell out of my seat when the county commissioner asked that. So either he knew and was asking for the general public, or he didn't know and wanted to find out what that was. And there was no real presentation until that question was answered, what the cities really thought. So that's what I would.
Kelly Ross, I'd also like to get Douglas County's planning recommendations and what they adopted, because they adopted what was sent up to them. If I can have a copy of that, please.
Yes, Chair Leipzig, we'll include all that information. I know that the full transcript of that board meeting will have all that information on it as well. And yes, as Commissioner Rass just mentioned, Douglas County, I believe, adopted their solar regulations last Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever date that would be. I apologize, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but they did recently adopt it last week, and so we'll include that final version as well.
Lindsay Grisay, one other question for the upcoming meeting where we're going to be considering the solar regulations. For those of us who have received letters for recusal due to conflicts, how should we go about that process as far as should we not show up to the meeting? Or because I think in the bylaws it says we shall not be present, participate, vote. I'm just wanting to make sure for my plans what the recommendations would be as far as the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. Anybody that is recused or been asked to recuse, they would not show up, and that would continue, that they would not be present, or they can show up and say they recuse, either way. And we can recuse it. But I think for clean, just not to be present during that portion of the meeting that pertains to the solar.
And Ms. Trent Lindsay Grisay, if we're disputing the recusal for, request or recommendation from council, then we would show up to the meeting, voice the, kind of air both sides and have a majority vote, and that would be the process. Is that what it sounds like?
Right. And we probably at that point would then move this to the advisory board to convene. And what my concern is, if you start voting on May 10th, your vote is in question if you were one of those individuals, and that is, concerning at this point. We may, if that is an issue, we need to know as soon as possible. I don't think I can convene the board. I'll try as soon as possible, but we need to move rapidly.
Understood. Lindsay Grisay, this is why I wanted to have this conversation, because if we are to be voting soon, we probably need that process to go forward, expediently. But for people who are contesting the process, you would show up to the next meeting or the recommendation, voice why you don't think that the recusal is necessary, why there isn't a conflict, and then we would vote as a board.
And then it will go And it may not be already one in the works of an advisory board right now. So.
Understood.
Yeah, so at this point, the sooner I know, the better. So I can do a parallel, whatever we're doing. So if it is incorrect, then they can participate and vote. But as early as May 10th, you could start voting on these amendments that are coming forward.
Ms. Trent, is there, do we need to know that information also as far as for a quorum discussion?
Yes, that's why I'm kind of needing to know as soon as possible, so we know whether you have a quorum. And you have by May 24th to review this and to return it back to the Board of County Commissioners. So your timeline is really short. And if we don't have a quorum right now for May 10th, then we would need to reset that meeting to a different date when everyone can be present. We already have May 24th, but that's a lot to put on a May 24th meeting. So you need 2 meetings, but we need to notify the public as soon as possible. And we would be able to notify through the Board of County Commissioner meetings. We'll get the word out if we do change that date, but the public's been told May 10th right now. So I'm trying to keep us to that date.
All right. Any other business? Do you hear a motion to adjourn?
I think we had to vote on the chairman for that meeting, Dave Johnson. And that was not me saying I want to be the chairman. That was me saying Dave Johnson's the wrong order.
Your question is, are we voting on a chairman right now?
I think that's what we're supposed to do. And then we got off talking about all this good stuff.
Well, we did, and we might as well handle that now rather than at the beginning of the May 10 meeting. You know, I sort of like the actual senior member of the board serving as chairman, unless he doesn't want to take that responsibility.
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
All right. Well, then I'm going to, move that we put Mr. Lund in as chairman for the May 10 meeting. Do I hear a second?
Terry Atwell, second.
All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
He being the senior member is automatic anyway.
Thank you very much. Thank you for doing that. I agree. It's not a job I relish.
Chairman Island.
All right.
When will we start seeing this packet? It's starting to sound like the packet's going to be pretty thick. And I didn't take any speed reading classes.
Yes, good question. Mr. Mason, Sean Penley, planning staff. Our intent is to get that packet out for the May 10th special meeting. For sure, the week before, ideally. We were actually trying to get all that information ready, our initial report ready this week, but the packet will go out next week. It would be at least 1 week prior to that meeting. So I believe it'd be May 3rd. That would be the expected date. We'll try to get that posted online just as soon as it's ready. But May 3rd is likely the date that will be posted and ready for distribution to the planning commission.
Okay. All right. We're adjourned. Yeah. You just.